TAG Heuer, Swiss avant-garde since 1860. Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso, and yes, today I'm going to be talking about TAG Heuer, specifically some new models that they've just released as part of their continued celebration of 160 years of being around, and also just as part of their general evolution and contribution to the new watches of 2020. Now, TAG Heuer got off to a bit of a slow start at the beginning of the year. I was a bit disappointed actually back in January when they had that LVMH event in Dubai, where Hublot and Zenith and Bulgari all came out with a lot of releases, but TAG Heuer was notably sort of absent. But in the second half of the year, TAG Heuer has definitely come correct. They came out with the new generation Carrera Sport chronograph. They came out then with a 42mm variant of the Carrera as well, both of those using O2 movement. And now we have a new variant on the TAG Heuer Monaco O2, which originally was released at the end of last year, but now we have a new model and it's on a bracelet. First off, the colorway, it is a black or sort of dark gray sunburst, but the big highlight is of course that new bracelet. And this, in my view, is an amazing move and it looks absolutely stunning. These days, whenever I see a new bracelet design that isn't essentially your basic oyster, which 90% of watches are or a derivative of, I'm always impressed because I feel like there's so little space to do anything different. And if you think of a lot of the great watches out there, think things like the Royal Oak, the Nautilus, even things like the Seamaster, for example, when they manage to create a great bracelet, that bracelet essentially becomes synonymous with that brand. And in the case of TAG Heuer, they also need to make sure that they're creating a bracelet, in the case of the Monaco, that honors its sort of 60s, 70s vintage vibe, because that's what the Monaco is. It's an icon of the late 60s, early 70s. And it's been really one of their most iconic watches. So they can't stray too far from the path and make it look too different, but also at the same time, they need to make sure they make something that looks modern. And in this case, I think they made an amazing effort in terms of creating this new bracelet. Otherwise, mechanically, it's the same as the Monaco O2 that was released last year, celebrating 50 years of TAG Heuer's contribution to inventing the automatic chronograph, as well as the original Monaco being released. So it's got the Heuer O2 on the inside with 80 hours of power reserve, vertical clutch column wheel chronograph, automatic of course, and with a date. What I love that they've done with this Monaco O2, both on the original and on this one, is that the sub-register for the running seconds is almost invisible. So you get all the look and vintage feel of an old 2-register chronograph, but you still have running seconds. You don't sacrifice a sub-dial. So many watches that have 2 registers, they'll sacrifice either the hour counter or the running seconds in order to achieve that 2-register layout look. With this, you get the look, but you don't lose any of the practicality. And it's nice and discreet, and it has a little crosshair on it, so if you need it to set the watch precisely, you still have some sort of guide, but at a glance, you barely notice it. And that's partly with the contrast of the nice white sub-dials on it. So I think this is a fantastic looking watch, and I love what TAG Heuer has been doing with the Monaco, and I hope they continue down that road, because really it doesn't have any natural competitors. I mean, a square watch with a chronograph. What really options do you have? You have the Cartier Santos, which is, I think, $9,000, has an inferior power reserve, and in my view is actually a little bit too big. I mean, it's 43mm, and 43 on a square watch is quite large. And then on the lower end, you have what? The Bell & Ross maybe? Bell & Ross chronograph features an ETA 2894, so it's a modular chronograph, again, much shorter power reserve. It doesn't have all 3 registers, and it doesn't have any of sort of the elegance or presence that the Monaco has, and that one is also much larger. I think that it's important for watch companies to remember that when you have something that's not a round watch, it wears very differently. So I think by making this a 39mm square watch, it's still something that's wearable, but it packs so much punch on a technical side, and is quite good value, and it's an extremely distinctive watch. This is definitely something I'd call a statement piece, but it's not something where you have to really spend statement money, if that makes sense. Moving on, we have another watch to commemorate 160 years of TAG Heuer, or specifically 160 years of Heuer. And on the face of it, I need to point out that TAG Heuer really doesn't get the credit it deserves for being around as long as it has. It's been around much longer than a lot of other brands, and it has done a lot in terms of innovations, the most notable being its contribution to the first automatic chronograph in 1969. So what have they done to celebrate, though, their 160 years? Well, at the beginning of the year, they had a very vintage-inspired looking Carrera. Now we have another one that, in my view, bridges the gap between full-on vintage styling and full-on modern TAG Heuer styling. What you could say is the one released at the beginning of the year was very Heuer. The new Carrera that they released, the Sport Chronograph in 44, is, I'd say, very TAG. It's more modern, it's sort of this time. This, I think, is really the marriage. It's a TAG Heuer. It's got vintage influence, but it doesn't look dated either. And in terms of that vintage influence, it takes its influence from the Heuer Dato 45, which was notable for having that date at the 12 o'clock. I'm not 100% sure if I really like it having that date at the top. I think it's just because I'm not used to seeing it. But apart from that, I think it's a great looking watch. I love it in particular in white with the black subdials. Again, they've done a similar trick where they blend in the seconds dial at 6 o'clock so that it doesn't really stand out. This looks like it's a 2 register, and they use these nice little accents of red as well. It gives it a little bit more vintage flair, but it is still a 44 millimeter modern sizing. It has the ceramic bezel that you find on the regular Carrera 02. Again, I think this is a great watch and a great celebration of what the brand is as a whole. It's not just celebrating the TAG era, it's not just celebrating the Heuer element, it's celebrating TAG Heuer, which is the entire brand. And the last thing, I think it's a very good amount. This is a limited edition of 1,860 pieces. Personally, I think that in general, any of these limited editions that are commemorating years especially should either center on how many years they're celebrating, so in this case it would have been 160, or the original year that they were celebrating, in this case 1860. What that means is that you keep your numbers under 2,000. I think when you start seeing limited editions of 5, 6, 10, 20,000 even, okay, I don't know who's doing a 20,000 limited edition, maybe Omega, but when you start seeing these elevated numbers of limited editions, I think it dilutes the specialness. So I think by keeping it at a nice 1860, it shows clearly what it's commemorating, it still keeps the volume down and still makes it special. And both of these, I think, are great indications of where TAG Heuer is going as a brand. With the new Carrera in general, you see a departure from the Jean-Claude Biver era in that they're no longer just centering on skeletonized dials. There was a point where watches from Hublot, Zenith, and TAG Heuer, all looking broadly the same, all at different price points. In my view, I think that just confused the market. It was very dated, and also it took away from what Biver's original success was, which was introducing skeletonization to Hublot and making that a signature part of that brand. I think making a Zenith that looks like a Hublot or a TAG Heuer that looks like a Hublot, it doesn't just dilute Hublot as a brand, it dilutes Zenith and TAG as well because it doesn't let them have their own identity. Now, thankfully, they've been moving away from that, and I think this new Carrera shows that TAG Heuer is dedicated to making its own sort of identity. So I think it's a great move, and that's with all respect to Monsieur Biver. I think that really his achievements should stay where they were when he made them, in this case with Hublot, while these other brands can then benefit on their own. And then also I love that these new releases all have the O2. I think whatever you think of the rocky start that TAG Heuer had with having in-house calibers, I personally don't mind that whole bullshit about the Seiko design movement. But whatever you think about that, the Heuer O2 is a very advanced, modern movement, 80 hours of power reserve. It's better than pretty much any chronograph caliber on a mass-produced watch in terms of power reserve, and it's still very accessibly priced in most cases. So I think it's great that they're moving more towards that. They've now put it in their two principal model lines, the Carrera and the Monaco. I'd next like to see it go into the Formula One, which I think is a line that definitely needs a little bit of an uplift, and also into the Aqua Racer when they have chronographs in it. And I'd love to see them come out with a three-hander in-house movement, whether it be derivative of the O2 or something completely new, so that they can continue pushing the in-house movements throughout the line, because clearly they're trying to move up market. You can see that with the quality of their higher end. So I'd like to see that now start to trickle down to their lower end as well, so they can elevate the whole brand and finally kill off the stigma that I think the brand has that I don't think is fair to it anymore, because a lot of that stigma came from the 2000s, the 90s, the early TAG era, essentially. I think LVMH TAG Heuer is much better than it has been in the past, and I think it deserves that credit, and it deserves a collection that reflects the 160 years that TAG Heuer has been around. But in any case, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these new releases? Which one is your favorite? Which one would you put your money towards? And do you like the direction that TAG Heuer has been going? I'd love to know your opinions in the comments below. And if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. And of course, if you want to see more pictures of these watches and the infographics that I use throughout all my videos, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Shaluso. And if you want to keep seeing new watch videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.